the acting performances. This is pretty unique to this movie, okay? There was only one actor that had any real acting experience in this whole movie, and it's the character. You'll recognize him. His name is Carrot in the film. And he's the only one that's a professional actor. The rest of them were either very, very up-and-coming actors who had just barely been in anything, or even more importantly, they were real people from the favelas, okay? So if you remember back when I was talking about Lund, Katia Lund, she started this whole thing called We of Cinema, and the whole idea was to help the people of the favelas learn how to work in film, either as actors or crew members, and help them find a way out of this poverty, right? Well, it all started with this film. So one of the things that they did is they went into the favelas and found actors that fit what they needed. And what they did is they set up acting workshops for, I don't know, a couple hundred kids and people, actually taught them how to act, and then went out and made this movie. Okay, so it's a pretty big opportunity for all of these kids. And then after this film, more productions and more things started to come film in Brazil, and it opened up more opportunity for a lot of this area. One of the things the directors say is that when they were first trying to shoot this movie, there wasn't really a whole bunch of black actors that they could even find. Right, they had no options. So part of why they did this whole acting workshop was out of necessity. And part of it was they wanted the authenticity. And when you go watch the movie, these people do a fantastic job. So whatever they were doing with them workshop-wise really worked, because it is very believable what's going on and the way these actors portray these roles, okay? And one of the things that was super important to them is after this film shoot was over, with all these people, the crew and the cast, they set up an organization and gave them services to help them get out of this impoverished area and try to give them a shot to have a more normal life. So that was something that was real big about what they did at the end of this film. They didn't just go film this movie and then leave all these people with no resources, which is pretty cool. The editing of this film, right? So the opening sequence, which we've talked about a couple times now, has over 50 cuts in about 30 seconds. So it is really, 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 really fast. And it starts with going to a shot and then black, and then a shot and then black, and then a shot and then a black. And then eventually the black spots go away, the black frames go away, and we kind of start to follow the action a little bit more. So it's really, really quick. In that opening sequence, you're kind of seeing a chicken who's about ready to be kind of served up for dinner, and this chicken is running away from its fate. And these little kids are trying to catch the chicken, right? And so one of the things that gets set up here is this thing called the Kuleshov effect. So Kuleshov is a Russian filmmaker, and it's way back in like the 20s, I believe, where he established and kind of gave it a name. He wasn't the one who invented it, but he was a professor, and he kind of gave it a name. So now it's called the Kuleshov effect. The whole idea of putting two images side by side to create a relationship and give it context. So the way it all worked way back then is he would do these visual experiments where like there would be a picture of an actor or a video or, a film shot of an actor, blank expression and just staring straight ahead. And then they would show it next to a bowl of soup. And then everybody would say, okay, so the guy's hungry, right? They would make the relationship between the guy and the soup, and he's hungry. And then they would show that same exact shot of that guy and put it next to a shot of a woman on a chase lounge in kind of some scantily clad kind of outfit for the 20s. And then everybody would come back and say like, oh, he's lusting after that woman, like he really wants to be with her. And then they would show like the same guy, same image, and there would be a shot of a casket with somebody in the casket. And then they would say, this guy is upset and he's mourning the loss of this person. So that was kind of the visual experiment that was going on. Even though the expression, it was the exact same shot of the guy all three times with no expression, they would associate whatever the editing was next to it with how this person was emotionally feeling at the time. And that's called the Kuleshov effect. And so that's one of the things that's happening with this chicken. The way the chicken's not making a different expression. It's not doing anything any different. But you kind of can understand that this chicken is kind of running away from its fate because we're seeing it up against them cooking a chicken and preparing it to be eaten out on the streets in Brazil. So just understand that that's what the Kuleshov effect is, and that's something that they want to set up as to what life is like in this area, kind of comparing it to the kids and the way this whole area works, right? The next thing on there says elliptical editing. So elliptical editing is when you take a longer sequence like preparing a meal, like this meal getting prepared with the chicken, right? And you cut it down into smaller segments so that we're really compressing the time and making it feel a little bit more energetic, right? That's what elliptical editing is, and that's what's done in that sequence. So I wanted you to know what that was called, okay? So the quick cuts help create the energy and the chaotic nature of the favelas. That's the whole point and what's happening all the way through, right? There's some scenes where it slows down a little bit, but when you're in those favelas and there's drug stuff going on and there's drug war stuff going on, they pick up the pace on that editing, and they really just want you through the editing to get the franticness and the chaoticness of what life is like in these areas, okay? And it's through the editing that the story comes back around on itself as well. So that's something that they use a lot. You're going to see them as they go through the film. Rocket is kind of narrating the story, which we'll talk about in a second. And he's like, wait, you know what? But we're not ready to tell his story yet. And then they'll move on. But then they circle back around and they tell you that person's story and how it fits into the narrative of what's going on. So they do that through editing several times throughout the movie, where they'll introduce you to somebody and say, you know what, it's not time to hear their story. And then they'll come back and they circle back around to it. So it's a pretty interesting technique that they use in the film. So I think you'll enjoy that storytelling technique. Hopefully you pick up on it and kind of see how it works and shapes the story. Sound design. So again, there's a first-person voiceover in this movie. So we've talked about voiceovers before. Rocket is the first-person voiceover that we hear. So he's kind of our only kind of theme of hope that's strung along the whole particular movie, right? He's kind of the positive influence all the way through, and he's just trying to find a way out, and eventually does. So he adds that voiceover, adds authenticity to the story and reminds us that this is based on real events. That's something that this voiceover helps us, like we're watching someone's real life. So that voiceover kind of connects that to us and reminds us, even though every once in a while they're doing some stuff to remind us that this is cinema, this voiceover is something that's trying to help us, remind us that we're watching something that happened to somebody for real, right? And then we have these two terms right here, diegetic and non-diegetic sounds. Okay, so diegetic sounds are sounds that are coming from within the scene, like someone's dialogue or a radio playing or someone playing a guitar. Those are diegetic. So you're going to hear those sounds like gunshots, and there's a there's a party that there's getting thrown for a character, and the music that the DJ is playing. Those are all sounds that are coming from within the scene, and they're helping create the feel of this area and Brazil and what's going on there, right? And then there's non-diegetic sounds. So that would be like Rocket's voiceover. That's a sound that's coming from outside the sequence that's being put in, and it's kind of artificial. And again, it's reminding us that this is somebody's story. And again, it's reminding us that we're watching a film. Again, I talked a little bit about it. The music selection creates authenticity, that we're watching this Brazilian film and it takes place in Brazil. So all the music that they choose is selected to kind of give us the vibe and the feel of Brazil at the time. But all these other sounds, like the gunshot sounds, those are there to help us kind of, it's just making the sequences seem more real, okay? So, again, check out the sound design. The sound design's pretty well done. It kind of really helps us feel like what life is like in this area. Last slide for this particular PowerPoint. We got the cinematic terms. We got the favelas, which is the slums of Brazil, right? You should know about those. The film begins in medias res, so that is the idea of the big film begins in the middle of a plot line, right? So hopefully you'll pick up on that and know that. The bullet time effect. So that's that special effect that gets used about 4 minutes in is about when you actually see that, maybe a little sooner, where it's kind of freezing the person and the camera kind of spins around them, and then we go back to live action, and that's an effect that was used in The Matrix. It was actually invented for The Matrix. The Kuleshov effect, so that's the idea of putting two images next to each other and creating a relationship and defining what one shot means based on what the other shot is. And that's what basically cinema is, a serial form of art form where every image gets its meaning from the images that come after it and the images that came before it, right? That's this whole idea that comes from the Kuleshov effect. And then we have diegetic and non-diegetic sounds, and that's the whole idea of diegetic sounds are sounds that come within the scene. You know, again, somebody talking or somebody playing an instrument or a radio playing within the scene. And then you have non-diegetic, which is like score from the outside that's really not coming from the scene. It's just music that would be playing to kind of enhance, or the voiceover of Rocket that's coming from outside the scene just to give us more understanding of the storyline as it plays out. So hope you like this movie. It's a pretty good film. It's fantastic. Cinematography is amazing. But again, the most violent film we're going to see, so hopefully it doesn't make you too uncomfortable. Hopefully you enjoy it. It's an important film to watch. Give us an idea about what life is like there in Brazil. Take care. We'll talk soon. Almost done now.